Christopher Wren is known in England as one of the greatest architects in history. Christopher Wren was commissioned to rebuild St. Paul's Cathedral after the Great Fire of 1666 that leveled London. One day in 1671, Christopher Wren observes 3 bricklayers on a scaffold. One crouched, one half standing, and one standing very tall, working very hard and fast. To the first bricklayer, Christopher Wren asked the question, "What are you doing?" To which he replies, "I'm working. I'm a bricklayer." Totally disengaged. The second bricklayer, Christopher Wren asked the question, "What are you doing?" To which he replies, "I'm building a wall," and happy about that wall, but didn't see the big picture. The third bricklayer, the most productive of the 3, the future leader of the group, the future transportation employee of the group, the engineer, when Christopher Wren asked the question, "What are you doing?" With a gleam in his eye, he exclaims, "I'm building a cathedral to the Almighty." That story has been told for over 300 years. The most productive people in life, in business, in state government, in your churches, in your communities, in your families, are those of purpose. So for the next 30 minutes or so, I'd like to ask you some questions this morning. Specifically, how does this powerful 300-year-old story relate to you? How does it relate to you as a transportation employee, a mother, a father, a brother or sister, a parent, a grandparent, someone in your community, someone in your family, your church, in leadership? Specifically, what can we learn from the leadership of Christopher Wren? See, I didn't know much about Christopher Wren until I started embarking on the book, Building Cathedrals, The Power of Purpose, in this keynote speech that I deliver across the country. But Christopher Wren was a Renaissance leader. Christopher Wren was responsible for rebuilding over 85 churches after the Great Fire of 1666 that leveled London. So he was clearly an architect. He was an engineer like many of you all are. He designed devices to lift water. He invented antiseptic agents. Christopher Wren was an astronomer. Sir Isaac Newton said that most astronomical equations should be attributed to guess who? Sir Christopher Wren. He was a medical doctor. Dr. Thomas Willis is known in medical circles as the father of neurology. And Dr. Thomas Willis was looking for someone to help him draw illustrations of the brain. So who did he recruit? A young Chris Wren at 12 years old. Matter of fact, if you were a medical doctor here in Kentucky or Tennessee or wherever, most illustrations of the brain were done by guess who? Sir Christopher Wren. It was Christopher Wren who injected alcohol into a dog's vein in the 1600s and realized visible signs of intoxication in that dog. For the first time in the 1600s, realized you could inject drugs intravenously. So Christopher Wren was clearly left brain, like many of you all are, and you should be. You're the transportation cabinet. I need for you as a customer to be left brain. But see, Christopher Wren, I think, was also right brain. He had those soft skills. He got out from on his desk and asked folks, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm working." "No, what are you really doing?" "Well, I'm an administrative specialist." "No, what you're doing is you're changing the world. You're helping that northern Kentucky community get those new highways. You're helping those interstates that I drive on daily when I commute from Harrodsburg to Frankfort every day. That's what you do. So the key question this morning, are you a Christopher Wren? Are you a Christopher Wren who gets out from on her or his desk and asks folks, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm working." What are you really doing? Well, I'm a highway engineer. No, you're changing the world. Do you realize the commerce, the economic development that people drive up and down the road every day because of you? So the key question in your family is, are you a Christopher Wren? See, I'd like to think I was a Christopher Wren in my family, but I'm not always. My son graduated from Western Kentucky University a couple, 2 or 3 years ago, and he calls me and said, Dad, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I got a D in algebra. Now, Christopher Wren would have said, son, it's not about algebra. It's about having more opportunities than your grandparents had and then more than your mom and I have had. It's about being better, stronger, and faster, son. I wish I'd have said that, but you know what I said? Boy, you better make more than a D in algebra. Your mom and I are paying a lot of money for his college education. I'm not always a Christopher Wren, but I need to be a Christopher Wren that helps people realize their purpose, their vision, serving that customer. So the key question, are you a Christopher Wren? The second question, in the second metaphor, what about the redemptive qualities of a fire? What about the redemptive qualities of a fire? See, in life, you're either getting ready to go through a fire, you're in a fire, or you just came out of a fire. How many have gone through fires in here? We all have. How many are going through a fire? Most of us. And see, most folks will say what doesn't turn you into ash turns you into iron. And see, London was horrible pre-1666. You've seen the movie Les Miserables. I call it less miserable. It's where I'm from down in Simpson County. You know, my wife wouldn't go see it with me because she saw Old Yeller when she was 6 years old, thought it was going to be a happy movie. He died at the end. She cried. She goes, I'm not seeing it. A sad movie the rest of my life. So I went to see Les Miserables by myself in Winchester, Kentucky. And at that time, I'm sitting there going, son of a gun, London was horrible pre-1666. Prostitution, poor sanitation, 10,000 people a year would die of the plague. The number one cause of the plague? Diseased rats and fleas. But after the fire of 1666 that leveled London, the diseased rats and fleas are eradicated. And the leaders of London, the leaders of Kentucky, you as a leader, because leadership is action, not position, the leaders said, let's make this place the best it can be. And they did. And most folks will say after a fire, they're better, stronger, and faster. See, I was riding pretty high. I was in corporate America. I was 15 years AT&T, Bell South at the time, division manager, got to be director. Ernie Fletcher recruits me to be on the Public Service Commission. Then I get recruited by an energy company, and my grandmother in Tennessee, you say, he's got one of those good jobs. I have one of those good jobs. Like what your grandparents and parents will say about you, he's got one of those good jobs. He's state government, he's transportation. But if you're ever going to be fired in corporate America, it's always on a Friday afternoon. And one Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the division president walks in and says, your service is no longer needed. I'm in the unemployment line in Bowling Green, Kentucky, feeling about this high. And 2 stories come to mind. One, John F. Kennedy at NASA, and he looks down and sees 2 people sweeping the floor. What are you doing? Well, I'm sweeping the floor. The second guy, what are you doing? Mr. President, I'm helping you put a man on the moon. Wow. I'd always consider myself sort of a man on the moon. And the second story I always heard was a guy or gal walking down the street. What are you doing? Well, I'm laying brick. I'm a bricklayer. What are you doing? I'm building a cathedral. That story always resonated with me. I always considered myself a cathedral builder and putting a man on the moon. I'm in the unemployment line in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where they should make me feel like a cathedral builder, but they made me feel like a bricklayer. Anybody been in the unemployment line before? That's good for the soul, isn't it? Well, I go home and start doing research and ask myself, is this story true? It is actually true. It's based on Christopher Wren. I didn't know anything about Christopher Wren. Christopher Wren was a Renaissance leader. After the fire of 1666 that leveled London. I'd never heard of the fire of 1666. But again, post-1666, post-fire, post-my fire, I'm better, stronger, and faster. My wife will tell you, my kids will tell you, Greg's a better husband, Greg's a better father as a result of being fired from corporate America. And when I point a finger at Kevin, the guy that fired me, I got 3 coming right back at me. You know what my rats and fleas were? Pride, ego, self-absorption. It was all about me. I used to say I was a cathedral builder. I wasn't a cathedral builder. I was a Greg Coker builder. When I lobbied the legislature for the phone company and for the energy company, and even right now sometimes, if the governor walks in or Greg Thomas walks in the past I was the first one to go, hey, how you doing? I didn't mean to push you out of the way, but that's what I did. That was optically what people saw me do. But a cathedral builder said, no, you go meet Governor Bevin. You go talk to him. You go talk to her. That's a cathedral builder. But the key question is, what fires have you been through? And some fires you never get over. I lost my dad almost 3 years ago today. It was Wednesday I lost my dad 3 years ago. That's a fire you never get over. But my mom will tell you, my sister will tell you, I will tell you, as a family, we're better, stronger, and faster. See, my dad was my biggest supporter, country boy from Hartsville, Tennessee. He would give you the shirt off his back. He'd do anything in the world for me. I'd call home. He didn't know he smothered the relationship out with my mom and me, but he sort of did. I'd call home. My mom would answer the phone. Hello, Mom, it's Greg. How you doing? Here's your daddy. Because I'm sure my dad's sitting there going, Barbara, let me talk to Greg. Let me talk to Greg. Does that sound like any of your parents out there? And I had a decent relationship with my mom, but my dad sort of smothered it out. My dad is in the cathedral now. My mom, prior to my dad passing away, could barely walk. Her knees were bad. Her eyes were bad. You see her at Walmart. She's all crippled up. People used to call me and say, Greg, I'm worried about your mom. And I said, I'm worried about my mama. And I'm sure before my dad passed away, she talked to my dad and said, Bill, I'm thinking about knee replacement surgery. Now, my dad would have supported eventually, but I'm sure I hear him now sitting there going, well, I heard so-and-so didn't have that good luck. And I hear my mom say, well, just forget about it. I won't do it. And she didn't do it. Well, guess what? My dad's in the cathedral now, and about 4 months after that, she went and had both knees replaced. She had eyes replaced. Now on Wednesday night in Franklin, Kentucky, at ARP and Senior Citizens, she's doing the electric slide. She's better, stronger, and faster. We talk every day. I spent the night with her 2 nights ago when I was in Nashville doing a workshop like this. But the key question is, what fires have you been through in your personal life? Death, divorce, job loss? Most folks will say they're better, stronger, and faster. But the key question this afternoon or this morning is, what fires has a transportation cabinet been through? Been through fires in here? Downsizings, layoffs, poor budgets, some projects that didn't go through. But, we've all been through fires. But most folks will say, as a result of the fire, they're better, stronger, and faster. What's the third metaphor? That of a cathedral. And the way I define a cathedral in my book, Building Cathedrals, The Power of Purpose, in this keynote speech this morning, is a personal expression of purpose. A cathedral. God Almighty, number 1. Family, number 2. The transportation cabinet, number 3. What about number 4 or 5? Boys and Girls Club, United Way, church, baseball team. And research shows the more we support the cathedrals of other people in our lives, the more engaged they're going to be. And I'll repeat that because I have failed miserably at it. The more we support the cathedrals of other people in our lives, the more engaged they're going to be. So what I've done at my office, literally just down the street on Capitol Avenue, is one of my employees will walk in and say, Coker, you got a few seconds? Well, yeah, I'm typing. Yeah, come on in. Man, let me tell you about United Way. Let me tell you about that little girl I've been mentoring. That's great, but I got a meeting about 9 o'clock. Can we talk about it a little bit later on? I just tore the cathedral down. Anybody done that? When I go home this weekend to see my daughter in Bowling Green who cuts hair. Oh, no, she didn't cut hair. She corrected me times. She goes, I don't cut hair, Dad. I change lives. Matter of fact, if you see that old lady across the street in room 17, the only reason she's alive is because her brother pays me to cut her hair every Thursday. I change lives. But when I go home this weekend and my daughter Abby, she's 21 and she knows I've been traveling. I stopped last night and had dinner with her at Chewy's in Bowling Green. But this weekend when I go back down there, she'll go, Daddy, how's it going? I know you've been traveling. How'd that speech go with the transportation cabinet? How'd that work go? How you doing? How you doing? If I'm not careful, I go ad nauseum about what I've been doing. And she's looking me dead in the eye and say, ask about my cathedral. Ask about Friend's Salon. Or my wife who's a flight attendant who's flying today. And when I see her tomorrow night, and she'll go, oh, Greg, how you doing? I know you've been traveling all week. How'd those speeches go? How'd those workshops go? If I'm not careful, I go ad nauseum about what I've been doing. Verse sentence there going, Nikki, tell me about the cathedral you build every day. Tell me when those folks walk on that airplane, they're white knuckling scared to death, you put your arm on them and you build relationships. That's the cathedral. So the key question is, do you support the cathedrals of other people in your lives? Or if you're like me, have you torn them down? But most importantly is, do you see the transportation cabinet as a cathedral? There's no greater example in state government than a cathedral, than transportation, than what you do. And I'm in the legislature pretty frequently, and I see this gentleman here and a lot of you all up there See, customer loyalty is built at the cathedral builder level, not the bricklayer level. You're going to get the money in your budget because when this guy right here walks in, when you walk in, when I see you on the interstate, when the legislators see you out there, is they see that you see this cabinet as a cathedral every single time. Customer loyalty is built at the cathedral builder level, not the bricklayer level. What about the three bricklayers? Which bricklayer are you? What are you doing? Well, I'm laying brick. I'm a bricklayer. How many felt that way? How many felt that way this morning? I did. I woke up. I was in bowling, Nashville, had Chewies last night. Oh, my gosh, that was talking to me last night. Got in bed about 11:30. Woke up this morning with a Chihuahua on one leg and a Boston Terrier on my shoulder. Couldn't barely walk this morning at 5:30. I felt like a darn bricklayer, but when I walk in that door there, you don't want a bricklayer, do you not? You want a cathedral builder. And when that customer calls you, they don't want a bricklayer over the phone. No matter what kind of day you're having or weekend you're having, we all have them. They want a cathedral builder, and they can hear it in your voice. So which bricklayer are you? What are you doing? I'm laying brick. I'm a bricklayer. We've all played that game. What are you doing? I'm building a wall. I'm an engineer. I'm a highway. That's great, but do you see the big picture? What are you doing? I'm changing lives. I'm building economies. I'm helping this economy in Kentucky and the United States be better, stronger, and faster. So the key question is, which bricklayer are you? I've played all three roles. And that's what today's about. When Brian called me, he basically said, listen, these are the best cathedral builders in state government, which you are. But guess what? We're human. Every day we've got to pick ourselves back up. Because every day I've got a bricklayer on one shoulder sitting there going, you're too young, you're too old, you're too white, you're too black, you're too this, you're too that. Anybody have that bricklayer on your shoulder? And then on this shoulder you're sitting there going, no, you've got to write the book. You've got to go out there and tell that story, Greg. You've got to tell them you can be better, stronger, and faster. And then lastly but not leastly is building cathedrals through touching and inspiring other people. Building cathedrals through touching and inspiring other people. See, I think we have the opportunity, no, we have the responsibility to touch people in a deep and meaningful way every day. What keeps us from doing that? Will she think I'm flirting with her? No, I don't hang out there all day long. Will he think I'm crazy, tell him I love him? You know, my best friend Jim, I love Jim. My wife says, are you going to give flowers to people while they're alive at their funerals? And at 52 years old, how many in here, and I know you're a lot younger than I am very often, do you look down sometimes and they're going, why didn't I tell them that? What I didn't tell her? See, we have the opportunity. I think we have the responsibility, the people we work with, to tell them. You know, I'm having dinner with my mother a couple months ago. We're eating. A guy in a wheelchair with no legs walks by, or wheels by. She didn't see him. I saw him, sort of peripheral. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at my mom, and all of a sudden, about 5 minutes later, he wheels back out. And he catches my mom's eye. My mom looks at him. He smiles. He wheels over. He gets in between my mom and me, and they hold hands for 10 minutes. He goes, I love you, Barbara. She goes, I love you, too. We had some good times at Kendall, didn't we? Because they worked together for 35 years in a factory in Franklin, Kentucky. Are we going to wait too long to retirement to look at that other person and they're going, I told you how much I care about you? Have I told you when I was going through my tough times, you were the first one that called me? See, we have that responsibility every day. So what can we learn? Let's go ahead and talk about Christopher Wren. I think Christopher Wren was a Renaissance leader. This is my favorite leadership model. You've gone through Myers-Briggs and a lot of this is called social styles. It says that we tend to look out of all four windows of the world. Not that I can't look out of all four of them, because I can and you do. We typically look out of one or two. I think Christopher Wren was right there in the middle. I think he was a balanced leader. See, you've got driver analytical. That's credibility. You got expressive amiable. At the bottom is likability. How many here have been credible at the expense of being likable? I have. How many have been likable at the expense of being credible? I have. See, the top part, driver analytical, is IQ. There's no doubt you have high IQ. Driver or expressive amiable is EQ, emotional intelligence, how you connect with other people. Driver analytical is the brain, expressive amiable is the heart. And I think Christopher Wren was right there in the middle. And in transportation, we get paid to be in driver analytical, which is management. Expressive amiable is leadership. Warren Bennett said that most organizations are overmanaged, under-led. How many agree with that? In my background in utilities, yours, Greg, too, most organizations are overmanaged, under-led. I'd say most countries are. See, our country's in a funk right now. And how many agree with that? Whether you're Democrat or Republican, it has nothing. When I stand up here, I'm not either one of them. But there's never been a time in America, in our country, in our world, we're looking for a cathedral to build. And we got a great cathedral. It needs a little polishing, but there's never been a time, but very often we overmanage and underlead. And see, if you know you can manage, if you love, you can lead. That sounds a little bit mushy. But guess what? One of my best friends, Dave Tapman, who's the former plant manager at Corvette, works for the Automotive Association right here in Kentucky right now. He used to be at Corvette. I walked in there, and in front of 1,000 employees, he goes, "We don't build cars, we build dreams." And that's a cathedral builder. Then he walks out on the plant floor, and all those guys with UAW, they're all tatted up. I mean, those guys, I used to work for the phone company. That was Communication Workers of America. Pussycats compared to UAW. Yeah. He goes out there, and those guys from Detroit, and they're going, "Dave, how you doing?" He goes, "Man, how you doing?" He goes, "Man, I love you. How's your daddy doing?" And see, if you know you can manage, if you love, you can lead. And I think Christopher Wren was right there in the middle. He was a balanced leader. He was left brain, like many of you all. He was an architect, an engineer, an astronomer, a scientist, a medical doctor, as we mentioned. He was right brain. He was an architect. He was an artist. He was a teacher. He was very modest. You don't hear much about Christopher Wren because he didn't patent anything. In the book Good to Great, Jim Collins says that's a level 5 leader. Did he have an ego? Oh, he had a big ego like you. But you know where your ego is? It's about the transportation cabinet. It's about Kentucky, not about ourselves. And he was a level 5 leader. And lastly, he was inspirational. He helped people see the cathedral. And on that day in 1671, only 2 people saw the cathedral. The third bricklayer and Christopher Wren. The other 2 were focused on the scaffold. Guess what? We've got employees out there focused on, guess what? The scaffold. And they don't see the cathedral because the cathedral was a mirage that day. Guess what? Our job in leadership is to help them see what they don't see, which is the cathedral. And Christopher Wren may have invented MBWA. You know what MBWA is? Managed by walking around. We got to do managed by walking around. I used to be with the phone company. I used to be with the energy company. We saw a truck that didn't have cones out. Guess what? We walked with our clipboard. We got out. You had to do that. You do that. That's management by walking around. But I put an L up there. That's leadership by walking around. You know what leadership by walking around is? No clipboard. Because when you get out of that truck with a clipboard, you freak everybody out. And I work with educators. When they walk in the back of the room and sit down to evaluate teachers, you freak the teacher out. Why not open the door? Why not pull your truck on the side of the road and say, "Folks, I just want to tell you all how much I appreciate you. There's no great example of a cathedral building, what you all are doing here in Russellville, Kentucky, what you're doing in Bowling Green or Pikeville or Paducah. Thank you." Get your truck and take off. They'll never forget it. That's leadership by walking around. And I think Chris Wren was both management and leadership. But see, it's not management or, it's management and. It's management and. He was also visionary. What about the redemptive qualities of a fire? What about the redemptive qualities of a fire? The fire of 1666, 430 acres totally destroyed, 13,000 homes, almost 90 churches totally destroyed. Loss of life, amazingly, was less than 20. Pre-1666, London was a very medieval town. Post-1666, it was a very modern city. We all have our personal fires, but like London, we too can emerge stronger, better, and faster. So what's the key questions? What fires have you had in your life? Everybody had fires in here? What about the transportation cabinet? How did you react? See, when I reacted, I pointed fingers. I had 3 come right back at me. How do you wish you'd have reacted? And specifically, what enabled you and others to come out of those fires better, stronger, and faster? See, there's actually been research. There's been research of folks like you, folks like me that are stress resistant, folks that come out of fires, and here they are. So the key questions, do you have these? Number 1, people like you that come out of fires, they take personal control. They're empowered, not overpowered. After we lost my dad, we all cried. We still cry. But at some point, my mom had to get it together and get back in the game of life. After I got fired from corporate America, there's one thing about depression, you get caught up on your sleep. And I did, and I had a fraternity brother from Chicago call me. He said, "Coker, I've been through that. I was with corporate America too. The music stopped. I didn't have a chair." You'll cry, you'll moan, you'll groan, you'll point fingers, but at some point, you got to pick yourself up, and people have to ask the question, what are you smoking? And that was a poor example. What he was basically saying is, I want some of that. I want to hire him. I want to hire her. And what he was basically saying is, your mama, Greg, your mom, when your dad passed away, at some point she's got to take personal control. And she has. Number two is their task involved. They're purpose driven. They got to have a purpose. Whether it's your church or a baseball team or whatever it is, and hopefully an activity of the transportation cabinet, this leadership program, they're purpose driven. Number three is they seek social support. And again, one thing about depression, you get caught up in your sleep, you don't want to be around everybody else. I remember early in my career, whenever I lost jobs or did something, I didn't want to get out because I knew somebody would walk up to me and go, what are you doing now, man? Where you been, man? Where you been? I didn't want to hear it. So what did I do? I didn't go out. Well, the contrary is true. You've got to get back in the ball game. And after my mom went through the death of my father, it took her for a while, but at some point she goes, I've got to get back out there. I got to get out there at ARP and senior citizens, and every Wednesday she has breakfast at Hardee's with her friends, and at Friday she has breakfast at McDonald's on Friday. She goes at 7:30, they stay till 11, about 20 of them. That's her purpose. That's what gets her back in there with her social support. Number four is they make wise lifestyle choices and strive to be at their personal best. They make wise lifestyle choices and strive to be at their personal best. I know my fighting weight. It's at 180, 190. I'm about 200 now. I know what I need to do. If I want to stand up here and motivate others and be a leader like you, I've got to see myself as a cathedral. I've got to make those wise lifestyle choices. Number five, they have a sense of humor. They can laugh with others and they can laugh at themselves. And at some point, you got to start laughing again. And after my firing from corporate America, I was through depression. A buddy of mine said, Coker, you and Nikki are coming with us. I said, where we're going? They said, you're just coming with us. So we drove to Western Kentucky University, and guess who was there? John Cougar Mellencamp. I grew up with John Cougar, Jack and Diane, baby. And Nikki and I, all of a sudden, we went from the back row to the front row. We're up there, Jack and Diane, sucking on chili dogs. I mean, guess what? Those endorphins started to be released again. We started laughing again. And that's the key. They have religious values and an ethical regard for other people. This is not a religious speech. Dartmouth, Harvard have all done studies. People who pray are sick less often. Folks go to church, get to the hospital quicker. It's that doing to others. And lastly but not least is they're optimistic. They realize after those fires in life, they're going to be better, stronger, and faster. So the key, do you have these characteristics? I think you do. But most importantly, are you helping other people that you work with saying, you've got these, and I'm going to help you get these? Because that's our responsibility to each other. What about a cathedral as a metaphor? The way to find a cathedral is a personal expression of purpose. God Almighty, number one. Family, number two. Transportation cabinet, number three. So what are the key questions? What's your cathedral? And that's what today's about. It's about seeing this place as a cathedral. Number two, do you recognize and support others in the building of their cathedral? Or if you're like me, have you torn them down? See, my dad was a factory worker, worked at Potter & Broomfield, was a tool and die maker. And I often wonder, was there a Christopher Wren at Potter & Broomfield who got out from behind his desk and said, Mr. Coker, what are you doing? My dad would have probably said, I'm working. No, what are you doing? He goes, I'm a tool and die maker. No, Mr. Coker, you're more than a tool and die maker because of what you do. The iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles built here. People enjoy their leisure activities on America's motorcycle because of you. See, I doubt there was a Christopher Wren at Potter & Broomfield in Franklin, Kentucky. Because I don't remember my dad talking much about Potter & Broomfield. But you know what I remember my dad talking about every day? His tobacco. See, that was his cathedral. And I had been tearing it down for 35 plus years because I had labeled my dad a bricklayer, factory worker, bricklayer, farmer. But before he passed away, he called me over one day. He pulled that out of his wallet. That article had been in his wallet for over 35 years. And what it says is, Bill Coker stands on a tobacco patch on Loving Chapel Road where he raised 15 acres of burley tobacco, 40 hours plus. That was my dad's cathedral. It had been in his wallet for 35 years. I had been tearing it down. How many have done that before with your parents or with your kids? Well, the story gets better. Underneath that, it says 40 hours plus, James L. Hammer, Simpson County Bank. You know who James L. Hammer was? Luther Hammer. He was my FFA teacher at Franklin Simpson High School. He retired from the school system, went to go work for the bank to be a loan officer. And what he realized instinctively, like you realize, is that customer loyalty is built at the cathedral builder level, not the bricklayer level. So what he did is once a month in his newsletter is he promoted a farmer in Simpson County who was, guess what, building cathedrals. That was the only time my dad had ever been in the newspaper. I moved back to Franklin, Kentucky, and I started banking at Franklin Bank and Trust. Simpson County Bank's gone. It's been bought up by Union Planters, Regents, and a couple other banks now. They're not locally owned anymore. My bank, Franklin Bank and Trust, is locally owned. So I go to my dad when he was still alive, and I said, Dad, you and Mom need to come over to the locally owned bank. No, son, I'm not going. Dad, you need to come over. Yours not. Son, I'm not coming. My dad would listen to me on everything except that. I never understood why until, guess what? That. My dad would never leave that organization because the legacy of that bank built my dad's cathedral. So the key question, the transportation cabinet, do you have newsletters here? Do you have opportunities to promote your employees' cathedrals outside the transportation cabinet? What about other customers you have out there about Amazon and the great things, the aluminum factories being announced yesterday? Let me show you a picture of my dad's cathedral, a tobacco barn. Anybody grew up in a tobacco barn like I did? I had been tearing it down for 35 plus years. So I'll ask the question again, do you recognize and support others in the building of their cathedral, or are you like me if you torn them down? Is it time to start building your cathedral, or perhaps building your cathedral with more passion, more energy, more dedication? What about the bricklayers? While we're talking about engagement here. And see, soft skills are so much more than problem solving, communication. I think we have narrowly defined soft skills. Soft skills is culture, purpose, engagement, forgiveness. It's so much more, but it's definitely engagement. And Gallup's done this poll every year for over 15 years, and the results rarely change. Gallup says that 26% of our employees are fully engaged, and that's you. So on behalf of the governor of Kentucky and the cabinet secretary, I don't think Greg would mind me talking. Thank you for being the 26%. You're the cathedral builders. And with the 26%, you get commitment. 55% of our employees are partially engaged. They're building walls. They're good employees. They come to work on time, they leave on time. 19% of our employees are totally disengaged. And they're trying to tear our cathedral down every day. They moan, they groan, they complain. Do you know those people? And I think in state government, in business, in our churches, the 55% are looking for direction. And they're going to get it from guess who? You and me, the 26%, or guess who? The 19%. Guess who's more vocal and visible? The 26 or the 19? 19. And they're trying to tear our cathedral down every day. In the school system, 26% of our kids are gifted and talented. You don't have to worry about them. They're going to the great schools. 55% going through the motions. 19% are the bullies. Where does the teacher spend most of his or her time? 19%. In our families, 26% of our families are the Darrell Catlets, my uncle in Harrodsburg. You go to out his farm, he's building a fire, it's spitting rain, it's nasty, but he's still building that darn fire. We get out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's he doing? He goes, Greg, come here, man. I love you, Greg. How you doing, Nikki? How you doing? Do you have anybody have a Darrell Catlett in your family like that? They see the big picture. My wife and I are in the 55%. We're going through the motions. I'm sitting there going, what the heck? Kentucky plays at 7 o'clock. Let's go inside and watch Kentucky. I'm even recruiting my kids. I'm sitting there going, Daryl's going to come in a few minutes and going to do something stupid. I don't know what it is. We're watching Kentucky at 7 o'clock. You got it? And sure enough, about 6:30, Daryl comes in. He goes, guess what we're going to do, guys? We're going to go sing Christmas carols in Danville with Alma. And I'm like, oh, hell no, we're not. I'm watching Kentucky at 7. So see, Daryl is in the 26%. Very often in the family, I'm in the 55%. Now, how many have an aunt in Louisville, not to mention her name because you might know her, who's in the 19%? Causes trouble all the time in our family. Always trying to get everybody fighting. Anybody have that? So it's just not in work, it's at families, but I've got to be in that 26%. You've got to be in that 26%. The second bricklayer can at least see the wall. What are the dynamics between the three bricklayers? You work with 19%ers? You work with 55%ers? Do you just jump in there with them with all those stupid jokes and engagement, or do you say, no, enough's enough? Well, this department ain't the same thing. This state government ain't, well, it's not. It's better. And we're growing. Now come on with us. Which bricklayer are you? Is it time to recommit? Or is it time to recommit to help other people see the cathedral? And in closing, building cathedrals through touching and inspiring other people. See, we have the opportunity. No, we have the responsibility to touch other people in a deep and meaningful way. And I talked about Kentucky basketball. I went to Western. That's Hilltoppers. I love Hilltoppers. I like the University of Louisville. I like the UK. I like all sports. But the best basketball game in the history of the world is this one right here. How many remember that? Jimmy V, baby, running around the court. What was that, 83 or so? NC State, Houston Cougars. What you see is NC State just beat the Phi Slamma Jamma. They weren't supposed to win. And what you see is Jim Valvano looking for somebody to hug. He couldn't find anybody to hug because all of his players already hugged up. I've never wanted to jump through a TV screen and hug someone more than that day right there. But guess what? Metaphorically speaking, at the transportation cabinet, who in the cabinet, your friends run around going, would somebody please hug me? Would somebody please hug me? I've lost all this weight. I've gotten remarried. I'm re-engaged. Would someone please hug me? And it doesn't have to be a hug. It could be a phone call or a note saying, have I told you how much I care about you? How proud I am of you, of what you've come through, that you're better, stronger, and faster? Well, guess what? 10 years later, Jim Valvano's dying of cancer. You've seen this in heavy rotation during the NCAA tournament at the EPSI Awards. And what he says in dying, he died like 3 months later of cancer. The wisdom of a dying man stands up and says, if I could do it all over again, I would do 3 things every day. Because if you do these 3 things, that's a heck of a day. Think, laugh, and have your emotions move to tears. That's profound. The wisdom of a dying man. And I go home and tell my wife, Nikki, I'm sitting there going, think, laugh, and cry. That's beautiful. She goes, Greg, I can think every day. I can laugh every day. I don't want to cry. Nikki, it's not a boo-hoo cry. It's what I call a Holy Spirit cry. It's a cry when I'm in Danville, Kentucky with Greg Cottle, president of Farmers National Bank. He's looking all good. We're walking across the street. And guess who walks out of a restaurant all sweaty and a beard, and I don't know who he is, jumps up on Greg, puts his leg around him and slobbers on him and said, I love you, Daddy. He goes, I love you too, Bruce. See, his son Bruce has autism. I started crying. He said he has that effect on a lot of people. Why don't I allow myself to do that? Because Jimmy V had it right. Think, laugh, and have our emotions move to tears. Touch other people. We have the opportunity to touch people in a deep and meaningful way every day. Why don't we do it? Would you think I'm flirting with it? Would you think I'm crazy? No, I have that opportunity. I need that opportunity. At 52 years old, I still have the same need to be loved and paid attention to as I did when I was 10. How many agree with that? We all do. It's the power of touch, but we get such management mode that we forget to lead. We get so in knowing that we forget to love. And if you know, you can manage. If you love, you can lead. Number 3, help other people realize what they do makes a difference. See, my son worked at McDonald's before he went to when he was in high school, before he went to college. And I used to pull in, much to his chagrin, every morning, get a Diet Coke and a sausage cheese McMuffin, and the little girl at the window said, Will, your daddy's here. And my son would go, dude, why do you come every morning? Well, there's some guy out there sweeping the parking lot, and I teach this stuff. I'm sitting there going, why can't I tell him, in the scheme of things, you're the most important person in this whole company? Because it is, because I pull into McDonald's or Hardee's or whatever when I travel. If the parking lot looks great, I pull in. If it doesn't, I'm like, somewhere else. So I roll my window down. I'm sitting there going, sir, excuse me. He's like, yeah, man, what do you want? I said, I'm just going to tell you, this place looks great. I travel a lot. I make my decisions where I'm going to stop based on how good the parking lot looks, and this parking lot looks really good. He looked at me like I was crazy. He goes, okay. Well, I drive away, but I couldn't help but notice he had a little pep in his step. Well, guess what? I come home that afternoon, and my son Will goes, Dad, you say something to John? I'm like, who's John? He goes, John, the guy that cleans our parking lot. You must have, because he come in that morning going, oh, yeah, parking lot looks good today. Now, do we have that opportunity? We have the opportunity every day. See, my grandfather was an ER doctor. One Saturday or Sunday, we would go to my grandparents in Auburn, Kentucky, right outside of Russellville, Logan County. The next Sunday, we go to my grandparents' house in Tennessee, Hartsville, Tennessee, Trousdale County. And my grandfather on a Sunday afternoon always worked. I'd see him drive up in his old truck. He'd get out with his greens on. He'd come in and he goes, oh my gosh, let me tell you about Dr. So-and-so. He's crazy. Let me tell you what he said. Let's tell about the ER. What happened this morning? Oh, man, it was crazy. Must have been a full moon. Well, guess what? 3 years later, my grandfather wasn't a doctor. My grandfather was a janitor. But see, because the doctors treated my grandfather with such respect, I just assumed my grandfather was a doctor too. But the key question is, do you treat everybody in our department, no matter if they clean our floors or they're the cabinet secretary, the same, because they are the same? Matter of fact, that may be more important than the governor right there. And this guy will be the first one to tell you, oh yeah. Because I'm in graduate school and had an A in the class, hardest business class in the whole business school. I studied my tell-all. All I had to make was like a 40 to get a B. To get an A. All I had to make was about a 40. So I go in there and take the final exam. They pass the blue book out. You remember the blue book, and open up the blue book. One question. What is the man's name who cleans our building? I didn't know. Made an F on the test, made a B in the class 7A. Most important question I could ever have been asked from a leadership perspective. Who cleans this auditorium? And do you give them the same respect that you would give this guy right here, which I know you do? Send handwritten notes. How many have personal stationery? I mean, how many have a note in their desk drawer right now that's more than 6 months old or a year that you can't throw away that someone sent you to say, hey, thank you? Most of us do. You know, have we sent one this week? And if you can do it with authenticity, that's powerful. Ask other people to tell you their story. We all have a story. Most people want to tell you their story. But guess whose story I've been telling all my life? Greg Coker's story. Hey, how you doing? Well, cathedral builders ask other people at Cracker Barrel, what's those 5 stars mean, man? How long have you worked here? What do you like most about it? And see, in heaven, I hope there's 3 things. I hope there's hot water because I got a bad back. I hope there's newspapers. I read them online every morning, but I'd like to read them on Sunday morning, the Courier Journal, Herald Leader, whatever. And I hope there's a shoe shine stand. Now, I shined my shoes this morning for you this morning. Got the black stuff, but there's nothing like going to a nice hotel or an airport and sitting on that big throne and pulling your pant leg up. I'm in Washington, D.C. when I was on the Public Service Commission. I go to the Hyatt Regency Hotel. I'm up there on a conference. And I see a sign that says, Shoe Shine Man downstairs. And I went, oh yeah, baby, I got some time, I'll get my shoe shine. So I go downstairs to the Hyatt Regency, and the sign says, be back in 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes, I got the USA Today, opened the sports section. All of a sudden, the United States Senator walked in. I mean, we're in Washington, D.C., there's lots of senators and congressmen. The United States Senator walked in. Had a nice coat on, had been snowing outside, took the gloves off, wiped the snow off. He kneeled at my feet and said, I'm here to shine your shoes. I'm like, why is the United States Senator here to shine my shoes? He said, I'm not a United States Senator. I'm the shoe shine man. He said, you listen to NPR? And I said, occasionally. He said, Google NPR shoe shine man. I'm the shoe shine man. I said, okay. You know, guy, go at it. So guess what? It's all about Greg Coker. So I sat there, the golden throne, and I opened up my USA Today and said, shine my shoes, shine my shoes. But at one point, I'm sitting there going, shame on me if I can't put my agenda down and ask him, a cathedral builder at my feet, tell me your story. So I did. I said, tell me your story. He goes, well, I was from New York City, and I dated a young lady. Her father was the shoe shine man at LaGuardia Airport. And he comes home one day. We're on the front porch. He said, son, how would you like to start helping me shine shoes at LaGuardia? I really never thought about it. But he said, I started to. By the time I'm a junior, senior in high school, I'm making more money shining shoes than most people are in full-time jobs. I get a letter from J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director at the time, for me to come to the FBI Academy to build my cathedral. So I go to Washington, D.C. I become an FBI agent. But they put me in the back of the office being an analyst. I can't touch people out there. I see a sign across the street that says, Hyatt Regency shoe shine man needed. I went across the street to start shining shoes. I touch a lot more people over there. I did it for 5 years, quit the FBI, have been doing it over here for 35 years. I'm also the night manager at U.S. Airways at D.C. National Airport. I put 3 kids through college. Wow. At my feet was a cathedral builder, and I was that close to missing it. Now, sometimes do we put our agenda number one instead of asking that lady that's walking in there, out there today that's cleaning those floors. Ma'am, how you doing? Tell me about your job. What did you do prior to that? Tell me about your kids. You from Frankfurt? Because everybody's got a story, and most people want to tell you their story. Never underestimate the amazing power of being a leader. I'd say the most responsibility. Who do you think they're talking about at the dinner table? You or Governor Bevin? You. And you have the phenomenal opportunity and responsibility to touch other people in a deep and meaningful way. Have a yes face. Thomas Jefferson, riding cross country on horseback, comes across a swollen river. The bridge is washed out. On the river's bank is a man who needs to ride across the river. Thomas Jefferson and his modern-day Secret Service trot up. The guy looks around, walks right to Thomas Jefferson. He said, can I ride across the river? Thomas Jefferson said, yeah, hop on. So he hopped on his horse, went across the river, jumped off, wiped the water off. Thomas Jefferson trots off. The modern-day Secret Service scolds the guy. How dare you? You could have asked any of us. You asked the President of the United States. You know his response? First of all, I didn't know he's President of the United States. Second of all, some people in life have a yes face. Some people have a no face. I asked the yes face. So the key question here, the transportation cabinet, do you have a yes face where I walk into your department going, oh, tell me about this place. What do you all do here? Oh, my gosh, that's cool. Or do you have a no face like I do very often because I'm in management, I'm a director, or I'm an engineer, and my face says, don't ask me. Anybody do that? We're on church on Sunday morning in Harrodsburg at the Baptist Church. Don't you say that's the Coker Road right there? That's where my granddaddy says there. When I should be having a yes face and I go, you ask me about transportation. You come in here and sit down with our family. So do you have a yes face or a no face? Forgive and reconcile. Many of you all know Dan Cherry. Dan Cherry was the Justice Secretary here in Frankfurt under Paul Patton administration when I worked lobbying up here, and Dan and I got to be good buddies. Done my workshop for Dan at the Justice Cabinet. Dan Cherry said, Greg, one day I'm in Vietnam, I'm flying. I look over to my right and I see a Russian MiG airplane coming right at me. I bank right. I pull the trigger on that guided missile. The Vietnamese pilot parachutes out. I blow the airplane up. I look at the Vietnamese pilot when I fly by. I salute, eye to eye, fly away. I'm sitting there going, you didn't kill the pilot? He goes, Greg, we don't kill pilots. We down airplanes. Wow, that's the cathedral right there. Well, guess what? Some 35 years later, Dan, Colonel Cherry, General Cherry, General Cherry is retired in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It is now Cathedral is the Aviation Heritage Park. And if you're in Bowling Green on 3 Springs, go down Scottsville Road, take a right on 3 Springs Road, about 1.5 miles on the right is the Aviation Heritage Park. There's about 15 airplanes there now. At the time, there was no airplanes. And that was Dan Cherry's Cathedral. And his buddies that he walked with every morning at McDonald's said, Dan, what if we can go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio and find out some planes that we might want to try to get to Bowling Green? So they drove up there, and somebody at Wright-Patterson said, you all are from Kentucky, and there's an airplane with some Kentucky significance, not here, about 20 miles down the road at a VFW, that they're having a tough time keeping up. And they said, Dan, what if it's your airplane? He said, I doubt it's my airplane, but if it is, it'll have 550 on the tail fin. Well, guess what? They drive late at night, shine flashlights amid bird poop and weeds on that airplane. They wipe it off. Guess what they see? 550. Dan Cherry had reconnected with the airplane he used in Vietnam to down that airplane. Well, the story gets better. They said, Dan, what if we can get that airplane back to Bowling Green? He said, well, the Air Force is hard to decommission an airplane, but guess what? Cathedral builders don't accept no for an answer. 6 months later, on a flatbed truck with a new paint job, guess what's in Bowling Green? Dan Cherry's airplane. And they said, Dan, what about that guy you shot down? He said, I think about him every day. I think about, is he alive? Number one, does he have a grandson like I do? Well, guess what? 2 months later, he's on the way to Vietnam. He reconnects with that guy. They appear on a TV program in Vietnam. That guy becomes best friend with Dan. They come back to Bowling Green together. Dan writes a book called My Enemy, My Friend. And that guy says, Dan, before you shot me down, I shot down an American. I wonder if he's still alive. Does he have a grandson like you and me? Well, they reconnected with that guy in Detroit, Michigan, and they appear on CBS News with Steve Hartman. It's like the war never happened, is what they comment on. Wow. The power of forgiveness, the power of reconciliation. And I do a model called form, storm, norm, perform. I think most organizations are stuck in storm for numerous reasons, but I think one of the major reasons is lack of forgiveness, lack of reconciliation. Now, well, I was a phone company, energy company, even state government. Well, man, Greg did something to me 5 years ago. Have you forgiven Greg? Well, guess what? Most of the time, I'll eventually forgive Greg, and Greg will forgive me. But do we reconcile? Very often we don't. Because we think reconciliation means, guess what? We think reconciliation means resolution, and it doesn't. So when I do intact workshops, everybody raise their right hand. You don't have to raise yours, but just act like you do. Raise your right hand. Is there somebody in this room you need to forgive? Forgive them. But number 2, reconcile with them. But number 3 is don't discuss the crap when you go out and have lunch next week. Because the guy that fired me from corporate America, it took 6 years to reconcile. Because in his mind, he thought reconciliation meant resolution. The lawyer in him, the HR in him says, don't go out to have lunch with him. Don't do it. You gave him a severance package. Don't do it. And closure was stolen from me for 6 years. The power of forgiveness, the power of reconciliation. And the foreword of my first book is by Charlie Plumb. And Charlie Plumb, like Dan Cherry, served in Vietnam. He didn't have the same luck, though. Charlie Plum's flying one day. He gets shot down over Vietnam in a rice paddy. He's captured, tortured, spent 6.5 years in a POW prison camp. He finally gets released. His wife's left him because that's what all the experts said is your husband's not coming back. If he does, he'll be in a body bag. But if he does come back, he's not going to be right. You need to move on with your life. So she did. And Charlie didn't blame her. Well, guess what? He's released. He's having a steak dinner in Kansas City, Missouri by himself. And all of a sudden he looks over and someone's staring at him. He can see it out of his peripheral vision. He goes, what's this guy staring at? Stared for about 15 minutes. Finally, the guy walked up. He said, you're Charlie Plumb. He said, yeah, I'm Charlie Plumb. He goes, you're Charlie Plumb. You were in Vietnam. You flew fighter jets off the USS Kitty Hawk. Yeah, I did. You were shot down December 3rd in a rice paddy. You spent 6.5 years in a POW prison camp. You were beaten and tortured. You were released last week. How did you know all this? The guy looked at him. He said, because I packed your parachute that day. Wow. In the foreword of my book, Charlie Plumb asks you, the reader, is, who packed your parachute? You know, Mr. Hopkins on bus 29 packed my parachute. I'm 6 years old, scared to death, country boy from Simpson County. Going to school, the most important person in the school system is not the superintendent, it's the bus driver. It's the cafeteria worker. So all of a sudden, open that, he threw a dirty T-shirt at me. Mr. Coker, help me wash that windshield off. That windshield didn't need wiping off. He knew I was scared, I needed a purpose. That's who packed my parachute. My Uncle Ralph packed my parachute. My dad packed my parachute. But most importantly this morning is, whose parachute are you packing? Whose parachute are you packing? A brother or sister, a niece or nephew, a brother, somebody that works here at Transportation? But most importantly is be a cathedral builder. There's no greater example of a cathedral in state government than transportation. And you see it every day. But in closing, be careful not to give them the whole load. And I feel like that's what I've done for the last 45 minutes or so, is giving you the whole load. And it reminds me of my grandfather, who was a Baptist minister. He says, Greg, one time I get asked to be a guest preacher in Tennessee, and I studied way before the internet. He said, I prepared, I studied, I was excited. I woke up Sunday morning, it started snowing. 1 inch turns into 6 inches, and 6 into 3 and 9, and before I know it, I couldn't even get out of the house. But I finally got in my car, wiped the snow off, went to the church. There was nobody there. I went, son of a gun, after all this preparation, I was excited, nobody's here. He said, I walked in the church, and on the front row was an old farmer. Had his arms crossed, bib overalls, hat. You know the guy. He walked up to him almost like to say, well, I guess, we're not going to preach today because there's nobody here. And the old farmer looked at my grandfather and looked up, and he said, I don't know a lot. I'm just an old farmer from Tennessee. But I do know one thing. If I'm in the barn, only one horse comes to feed, I'm going to feed it. So my grandfather said, this guy wants a sermon. So my grandfather got up behind the pulpit. He said, I went to town. He said, everything was just clicking, stories were going good. I'm listening, going, I wish there was more people here to appreciate it. He said, I looked down at my watch. I've been going an hour, nowhere near being done. He said, finally, I end with a benediction. After about an hour and 45 minutes, I wiped the sweat off my brow. I go down there to get some feedback from that old farmer. Hadn't moved an inch. Just sitting there. He looked at him like, well, what do you think? The old farmer said, I don't know a lot. I'm just an old farmer from Tennessee. But I do know one thing. If I'm in the barn, only one horse comes to feed, I'm going to feed it. But I'm not going to give it the whole load. So I feel like what I've done this morning is giving you the whole load, but I do think it's the whole load that's going to take you and transportation to even greater heights. Thank you. Have a great rest of the conference, and I'm honored to be here.